Winning in 1992 was one thing, but many key players would not be back in 93. And the question on everybody's mind was, could the Blue Jays do it all over again? No team had won back-to-back world championships in 15 years, and the Blue Jays were asking a lot from their returning players. But if any team knew how to win, this one did. Back to back, the story of the 1993 Toronto Blue Jays.
Hey, world champs are back again. Time to repeat.
But first, time to limber up.
Damn!
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them. So
Paul Molitor joined the Blue Jays in the offseason. Ed Sprague moved over to third. And there was also a new shortstop, Dick Schofield. And a new starting pitcher, Dave Stewart.
Now they ask you, what are you going to do for an encore? What are you going to do? And hopefully we're going to do what, no other team has done since the 77, 78 Yankees. We want to back-to-back this thing.
Maybe the team that cuts heads together wins pennants together.
You go with the smaller look, style, and a little ball spot back in the back, but that's natural. Oh, baby. Hey, you can't look no better than that.
On April 9th, at their season home opener, the Blue Jays couldn't have felt any better. In front of a sold-out Sky Dome, they proudly accepted their World Championship rings.
That's a day that you will never forget. It's a World Champion ring. There's a lot of guys out there that have been playing for 15 or 20 years in the big leagues and never have a ring.
But getting that ring was probably the epitome of what every baseball player dreams of. And it finally coming true. You waited so long for that ring. You were just, smiling from ear to ear.
The Blue Jays were now on a quest to repeat. And in the home opener, Ed Sprague got them off to a convincing start.
Breaking ball, lashed to left. Bell turns. Goodbye, Sprague. Homers on opening day. 3-2 Toronto.
Sportsfeld!
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are looking back, way back to our childhoods after doing some very recent ones with the 2020 games last month and some 2000s games. We're going back to where it all started, the highlight of our childhoods. It is the 1993 Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, indeed, we are going back to the Joe Carter home run over the Philadelphia Phillies. Mitch Williams in Game 6. It's going to be a ton of fun. The next couple of weeks, we're looking back at, I know for me, a team that I absolutely took for granted. Just sort of assumed this is what being a fan of sports was. Your teams are always great. The Leafs are always a great team. The Jays are always a great team. The Raptors don't exist yet. But Toronto sports fan in 1992-93 was good living, let me tell you.
Yeah, it was. It's funny because I'm just a couple years younger than you, but it's funny how it makes sense why we are the sports fans we are, if that
Absolutely.
makes sense. Even though just a year later, things would turn around and go the other way for a long time. But it was, as a young budding sports fan in 93, it was impossible to not be in love with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They were, we've heard said many times on sports radio, the highest payroll in the league. They're coming off their first World Series championship in 1992 when they went 96-66. This team the following year, 95-67, somehow a worse record despite being just an absolute murderer's row powerhouse of a baseball team. I'll tell you the first thought that came to my mind looking back at this team, looking back at the records, looking back at the schedules, is when you are 7 years old, as I was at the time, you do not remember regular seasons.
Yes, 100% correct.
Like, I guess that's obviously because we're adults now, but like looking back at the Raptors run, like you remember some great regular season stuff. You remember the 2015 Blue Jays regular season. I don't remember a single moment of 1992 or 1993 that was not a playoff game.
The only moment I remember of the 93 regular season was not even like a specific game. And I was like, I turned 5 during this season. So like, not the most aware sports fan yet, just know I like it kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
But I do remember the story of John Olerud hitting 400. And the 3 big hitters with their crazy batting averages, that being Olerud, Alomar, and I guess Molitor doing the other one.
Yes. Yeah.
But I wasn't in it enough yet I knew what it meant, because I understood what batting average was, but I wasn't in it enough to realize like how big a deal it was that someone was chasing 400 on a Toronto team. But that's the only thing I remember from the regular season, that was a story.
And they finished 1-2-3 in batting average, which is like, that's unbelievable. It's like
the numbers on like, it's funny. I remember I've gone back a couple times in my more adult years and looked at the 92 roster. And it's like, okay, obviously they won the World Series, obviously a good team. But like there's some holes in there that you're like, wow, that was really a starting player on a World Series winning team. But then you look at the 1 through 9 on the 93 team, and it's like, Jesus Christ. Of course.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. How do they not win more games? Was the only question I look back at it and sort of answer. To sort of connect the dots here between 92 and 93. After they win the 92 World Series, Jimmy Key leaves as a free agent. Dave Stieb leaves as a free agent. Old friend Pat Tabler leaves as a free agent, along with Mark Eichhorn, Rance Mulliniks, and Alfredo Griffin, and David Cohn, and Dave Winfield. It's like, oh, there's quite a few holes there to fill. They filled the Dave Winfield role with fucking Paul Molitor, a Hall of Fame DH who had just played 15 years with Minnesota, a multiple-time All-Star. He comes in and immediately hits 332, 143 OPS plus, just like an absolute beast to add to that already great lineup. As you mentioned, you sort of point out he ends up helping them finish 1-2-3 in the batting average race. Then they signed Dave Stewart to fill one of those holes, former Oakland A's, absolute badass ace. Eichhorn comes back, Griffin comes back, and they also add, they trade Kelly Gruber for Luis Sojo, getting out ahead of the fact that Kelly Gruber would be canceled later on in life for being drunk at a pitch talks, I believe was the official thing that he did.
Also, mid-season, add literal Rickey Henderson.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. That's sort of your off-season to get to your in-season transactions. Why not? Why not go right for it and go right into the 93 transactions? Just crazy. Like, just trying to imagine now trading for Rickey Henderson at the deadline. Like, just so sick. Just like, that's just so fucking cool. Like, just unbelievable. As a kid, we talked about this already once, but you just take for granted that like they added fucking Paul Molitor and Rickey Henderson. Like they could not have added 2 better players for the generation. Like the greatest leadoff and stolen base guy in the history of baseball, and like an absolute unbelievable solid DH. To give you some of the idea of some of the numbers, Alomar hits 326, 408, 492 and wins a Gold Glove. That's a 141 OPS plus. Molitor 332, 408, 509 with 22 home runs and 111 driven in. That's a 143 OPS plus. Joe Carter, who was obviously the fan favorite and will be mentioned again, 33 home runs and 121 RBI, 802 OPS plus. 802 OPS for 112 OPS plus. Even Devon White is a positive OPS player. And looking back at the highlights, one of the best defensive center fielders you will ever see in your life. He was actually second on the team in WAR because his center field was so damn good. Tony Fernandez hit 306 this year with a 361 on base after coming back in a trade during the middle of the year. The only hole offensively, Pat Borders was not great. A 75 OPS plus, hit about 250. But that's fine. He was the reigning World Series MVP. The big one, though, as you mentioned, 24-year-old John Olerud hits 363, 473, 599, a 1.072 OPS, a 186 OPS plus, 24 home runs, 107 RBI, 114 walks to 65 strikeouts. You look back at it and you say, on what planet did he not win American League MVP?
To be sure, the Blue Jays were the real thing. And no player was generating more excitement than John Olerud. Hitting in a class all by himself, Olerud launched a sensational assault on Ted Williams, the last batter to hit 400. It was a dream season that Olerud hardly figured on having.
Last year was my best year, hitting 284, and I think coming into the year, I felt like hitting 300 was a reasonable goal to shoot for. 20 or more home runs and 80 or more RBIs. That's what I was shooting for, and this is all uncharted waters for me, so just sort of keep going and see, how well I can finish up.
The only thing more mesmerizing than Olerud's chase of 400 was the swing that was launching 1,000 adjectives.
Very controlled swing. Look at that. Head doesn't hardly move. Short stride, and boy, those hands come through quick.
He continues to come up with hit after hit after hit.
Stays right on it, gets great extension. Good example of how your head stays engaged. It stays close to the plate, allows you to get through the ball.
Stays on the ball, chokes up on the bat a little bit.
Well, this is just the textbook swing. If you wanted to take pictures and put it in a book, that's the swing to do it with right there.
It's like a camera. Picture perfect. It's Kodak moment every time he swings. Everything's the same. You never see him get fooled. Never. Oh, this is serious here against California. When he just, everything he hit went out. What, he hit 4 home runs that series?
Here comes the natural, and he blasts the first pitch. Olerud hit it a ton. It's gone. Home run. Unbelievable.
That's something that they've always tried to get me to do, is be more aggressive early in the count, because in years past, I would really get behind in the count and have to hit some tough pitches and battle back. And I think this year I just got off to a good start, did a better job of being aggressive early in the count.
Watch his follow through. Head is always down. That is a big key. You never see him come up like this where his head comes out. His head is always down through the hitting zone, and he just follows the ball just like a golf swing. Boom, follow the ball. You can't teach that.
Olerud was a model of consistency. In June, he drove in 30 runs, batted .427, and for the better part of the month, never came up empty.
A shot to left field. He's hit in 26.
The major's longest hit streak of 93, and the longest ever by a Blue Jay.
And to your point about not remembering regular seasons, I would have bet my life that Rickey Henderson was here the whole season.
Right.
Because the exposure as a young person to these teams through memories and highlights, because there aren't any fan shots in the crowd videos of these games because fucking phones didn't exist yet. But our exposure was the World Series VHS. I assume you're the same, which picks up this always drove me crazy. The 92, I had the 92 and the 93 VHS. The 92 VHS has a great season summary, full ALCS, NLCS recap before it gets to the World Series. The 93 VHS just breezes through the ALCS, nothing really about the regular season, and then the full thing is World Series. So my enduring memories of the 93 season are just the World Series.
Yes.
So all these stats and all these players are kind of I know it happened because I just know these things now, but they are sort of oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And also, how did John Olerud not win AL MVP?
I will say Frank Thomas wins AL MVP that year. He hit 41 home runs and 128 RBI. His OPS was lower. John Olerud did have the highest OPS in the league. But Olerud also finished third in wins above replacement that year. Ken Griffey Jr. Hit 45 and 109, got on base a ton, and played center field. Kevin Apier actually had the highest WAR. But Olerud finished third in WAR, finished third in MVP voting. But man, oh man, he actually finished behind Paul Molitor, if you can believe that, in MVP voting.
That's crazy.
Molitor drove in
I guess
4 more runs.
I guess it is like sign of the times too. Like was WAR even a stat then?
No.
So I guess when it was just, average home runs and RBI, I guess that does make sense.
Yes. But still crazy. That is your lineup, just an absolute threshing machine, just an unbelievable, the likes of which we would not see again for 2 decades. On the mound, they weren't quite as dominant. This is probably where you are seeing not winning as many games and not winning 100 games. Juan Guzman started the most games. He was 14-3 at 3.99 ERA. Pat Henkin, 19-9, an absolute legend in Toronto. Pat Henkin, that's a great year, 19-9 with a 3.87. Todd Stottlemyre, who fucks his chin up, of course, in the playoffs. He was 11-12 with a 4.84. Dave Stewart, the veteran at 36 years old, he was 12-8 with a 4.44. And then Jack Morris was absolute butt cheeks. 7-12, 6.19 ERA. 4 complete games though, because he's a Hall of Famer. They also had Al Leiter, made 12 starts. If you remember, we love Al Leiter, don't we, folks?
How can you not love Al Leiter? I loved Al Leiter as a kid.
Yes, me too.
He fucking came in 92. If he existed in like the Twitter stan era of Toronto sports Twitter, Al Leiter would be a legend just for 92.
Yes. Dwayne Ward, 70 appearances out of the bullpen, 45 saves, 2.13. Crazy. Danny Cox, Mark Eichhorn, Mike Timlin, who of course is always in the mix and all this stuff. Tony Castillo, your most used relievers. Woody Williams, also sneakily making 30 appearances for this team in the back end of this bullpen. Some guys to remember: Darnell Coles, Turner Ward, Randy Knorr, Alfredo Griffin, Rob Butler, if you will. Maybe Domingo Cedeno. Sean Green, your boy, played 3 games for this team. And Carlos Delgado had 2 plate appearances for the 1993 Toronto Blue Jays.
That is wild to me that Sean Green and Carlos Delgado played for this team.
Obviously, yeah.
In my historical brain, obviously it makes sense.
No.
But in my brain, Sean Green showed up in 96 and totally. Delgado around the same time.
I would hazard a guess that service time manipulation was not a thing, because Sean Green was 20 and Carlos Delgado was 21.
Right. Fair enough.
Playing 3 games and 2 games for a 96 win team. That would never happen now.
Yeah. They're both post-strike players to me.
Absolutely.
I think is how obviously their primes are, but I didn't realize it was this early.
A last sort of run, sort of through their standings there. They obviously finished first in the American League East. You had to, back in the day, to make the playoffs. It was the winner of the East versus the winner of the West was the entirety of the ALCS. No, none of this ALDS crap. But as I said, 95-67, they were the best team in the American League. 1 game above the Chicago White Sox, who finished 94-68. They were 7 games up on the Yankees, who finished 88-74. And then it was the Orioles, Tigers, Red Sox, the Clevelands, and the Milwaukee Brewers. That was the American League East in 1993, if you can believe that.
So I'm glad you sort of ran off that list, because it's one of those, what do they call it? Mandela effect things with the Milwaukee Brewers for me specifically, where it's I know we play the Milwaukee Brewers 30 times a year. Yes. And then your brain forgets about realignment, and it's oh no, that can't have happened. But I'm no, I know that I've seen the Brewers so many times. And then you see that, it's right, because that's how it was. And now I feel less insane.
After sweeping in Oakland, they lost 3 straight in Anaheim and came home on September 7th only to be swept again, blowing late inning leads all 3 times. The only good news was that the Yankees weren't winning either. They lost 5 out of 6, and instead of climbing into first place, the best they could do was a tie.
When we lost 6 in a row in September and didn't relinquish first place, I think psychologically it gave our club a big lift because we were struggling and no one seemed to be able to take advantage. And from that point on, whatever reason, our game got turned on from pitching and offense and defense, and we just haven't looked back since.
On September 14th, the Blue Jays took their winning streak on the road. They swept a pair of wild and crazy games in Detroit and raised their first-place lead to 2.5 games. From Detroit, they went to the Metrodome in Minnesota and kept streaking. Pat Henkin won the first game, Dave Stewart the second, and with their first-place lead up to 3 games, they looked to the red-hot Juan Guzman to complete the sweep. Guzman had not lost a game in 2 months, and against Minnesota, his stuff was as sharp as ever, producing nothing but zeros for 8 innings.
As of September 9th, they were tied for the American League lead, and they went on a 9-game winning streak from the 10th to the 20th, to the 21st, to pull away, to make it a 5-game division lead, and never looked back from that point. So the last month of the season, they were really, really, really good, that's so Blue Jays. Anyway, that sets you up. They are going to take on the Chicago White Sox in the beginning of the ALCS. We will get to that next week on Sportsfeld Storytime.